Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. It's good to be back, and it's time to get a horse. Down here in the basement we have had several saddles in one or the other of these chests. Did I put them in precious materials? I did, there we go. We've had a bunch of saddles and some horse armor lying around for a while. You can find these in dungeons, you can fish them up. The horse armor can be found in certain treasure chests around the world, and naturally it implies that a horse is going to be a useful thing to have. You'll typically find horses in open plains biomes. In fact, there's a herd of horses down here that I've known about for a little while. And unlike the other pet animals in the game, like cats and wolves that can be kind of turned into dogs, to domesticate a horse, you really just need to get it used to having a rider. So that involves getting on top of the horse a couple of times, they'll buck you off a couple of times, but eventually you'll see some heart particles pop up and the horse will learn to love you. Now you can speed up this process by giving the horse some food, but for now we're just going to do it this way since it's not actually required to give the horse some food. It's just kind of a bonus to speed things up a little. And for the moment, the horse will just be walking around randomly, but it seems like this one has got used to my presence. The real test of that is if I press E, yes, there we go. We can open the horse's inventory, and we can add a saddle. Adding a saddle to the horse will make the horse directionally locked to whichever way you are facing, and you'll actually be able to control the horse. Unlike if you don't have a saddle, I'm pressing the arrow keys right now and nothing is happening. You can see the horse's head doesn't stay locked to the camera. Putting the saddle back on will enable us to ride this horse around, and we can take a look at the horse's ability. Each horse has a series of 3 stats that you will want to pay attention to. The health, which you can see down there, has replaced the hunger bar when I sit up on the horse, the jump height, basically the vertical jump distance of the horse, and the speed at which your horse travels. Note that you can try and sprint while on a horse, but it doesn't seem to make any difference to the horse's actual speed. But one of the main advantages to riding a horse is that you don't have to spend so much time jumping up over single blocks in the terrain. The horse will simply ride up over those, allowing you to just hold forward and travel at decent speeds. You also don't get hungry while riding around on a horse since the horse is doing most of the physical work, therefore it is a pretty decent way of getting around in the early game. One of the main drawbacks to having a horse as your form of transport is that without a way to hitch them to a post, they are just going to wander off somewhere. So in this case, I'm going to run into the house and grab a lead. Leads can be made using 1 slime ball and 4 string. If you haven't managed to find slime already, wait for the wandering trader to show up, and you can either kill the wandering trader and his llamas, or simply put one of the llamas in a boat so that when the trader wanders off, the lead will break and you'll be able to pick up the lead from the ground. Now, as you can see, our horse has already ended up over here on this hill from where I parked him over there by the staircase. So in a very brief amount of time, the horse has wandered off. You can, of course, dig a hole for them to sit in. You can probably dig maybe like a 2x3 hole a couple of blocks deep, and the horse won't be able to wander up out of that since they can only jump up over 1 block high areas. But in this case, we can probably tie him to one of the fence posts around here, or get another fence post and just simply right-click on that with the lead in hand, and the horse will get tied up to it. If the fence post you've attached the lead to is too high off the ground, though, the horse can potentially walk out over this drop down and either start dangling or take a little bit of fall damage as it wanders off here, so we should probably create a hitching post that's slightly closer to the ground. I'm still in the process of designing the blacksmith's house that I want to build around the super smelter, but I'm thinking the bottom floor of that is going to have a decent set of hitching posts, and maybe even an area where it seems like the blacksmith would work on horseshoes for the horses. Now let's go down here into the basement and grab some of the horse armor that we collected, because we can have iron, gold, or diamond horse armor depending on what we find in loot chests around the world. And if you don't like either of those colors, it's also possible to craft your own horse armor using leather, or purchase horse armor from a leather worker. A simple H shape in the crafting interface here made of leather will get you a leather horse armor, and this can be dyed in all of the different colors that leather armor can be dyed. Excuse me, just got to deal with some pillagers that were eyeballing my villagers over here, and then we can get back to the video. Now then, going back to our horse, we can hold shift and right click on the horse to access its inventory without getting on top of it. And you notice I say inventory, but this horse doesn't have any saddlebags, any slots that you can store items in, and that's something we'll get onto a little later in the video, so stick around if you're curious about using your horse for transporting items as well as just players. But the leather horse armor will look like this by default. As I mentioned, you can dye this one different colors. Iron horse armor looks like this. It's got a bit of chain mail kind of around the shoulder area of the horse. Is that the shoulders? Horse people, let me know. The gold horse armor looks very majestic and regal, especially on this black horse that we have found, and this diamond horse armor will also look pretty cool too. And as you get on the horse, you'll notice that this doesn't necessarily show you an armor gauge for the horse anywhere, not even above its health where you might expect to find it. But horse armor does actually increase the defense of your horse. So if you are concerned about your horse taking damage, maybe you're riding around at night and you're getting shot by skeletons and the horse is taking the damage instead of you, diamond armor is the most effective protection for a horse to wear. It's not going to be as complete a set of protection as the player can have, and horse armor cannot be enchanted, so you're not going to get projectile protection enchantments or blast protection for your horse, but the trade-off for that is that horse armor does not have durability. It will remain on the horse indefinitely until you take it off or swap it out. But naturally, leather armor gives the least amount of protection, and then surprisingly, iron and then gold. For once, gold armor is actually more effective at protection than iron armor is, which is definitely not the case for players. But of course, diamond is the most protective armor, and probably the horse armor type you'll find the least in loot chests. I found a lot of iron and gold armor, but not so much diamond horse armor, but hey, it is worth having around. Now I'm going to go and grab a bunch of food from over here. We can bring some wheat. I believe you can also feed them apples and sugar. Horses will accept a variety of things as food. We're going to go past the herd of black horses that we found over here, and there's a herd of brown horses just nearby. I want one with slightly different coloration, so I think we'll pick this one here. And this time we're going to feed it a bunch of wheat to see if it tames a little bit faster. We're going to hop on the horse right away, and it's bucking us off a couple of times, but there we go, we got the heart particles within 3. That's not too bad, and that allows us to mount up this horse, which you can see in the lower right-hand corner there, does not have nearly as much health as the horse that we just caught, and speed-wise, it feels a little bit slower, but I wonder, yes, this one definitely has a much higher jump height. It's definitely a little bit floatier than the other horses, which is good. We're going to add some armor to this one. Let's give this one the gold horse armor. Let's ride it back over the hill to meet our first horse. Now, for the moment, like I said, we're going to hitch these horses somewhere down on the ground. We're going to put those two fence posts right there. We're going to tie this new brown horse to the spruce fence post, and we're going to tie this horse over here to the dark oak fence post. And they don't need to be leashed to a fence to do this, but we're going to talk about horse breeding. For that, we are going to grab a few carrots and a few golden ingots, because if you haven't found any golden carrots or started trading them with farmers yet, you are going to need some gold carrots in order to start breeding horses. So we're going to break down some gold ingots into gold nuggets, surround the carrots with the gold nuggets to make sure we have a few golden carrots, and then we'll just craft the rest of those nuggets back into ingots. So once I'm holding the golden carrots in my hand, you'll notice that both these horses are wiggling around trying to get to me. Horses can be bred with either golden carrots or golden apples, but I recommend doing this with carrots since they are far cheaper to produce than a golden apple. But the two of those will breed, and together they produce a foal. These younger horses can still be fed golden carrots as part of their food. That will just encourage them to grow up quicker, so we should probably just put the golden carrots away at this point and start feeding them wheat. Unlike other animals which go through a single growth stage, growing from their baby size to the larger adult size very quickly, you'll notice that foals go through several growth stages. They start off small and will just get progressively bigger, but obviously right now we can't do anything to ride this one. We can't add a saddle to it. It doesn't have any kind of inventory to look at. We're just going to get our final lead and leash it to a fence post neighboring its parents. And it takes a little while for the horse to grow up, but once it has, you might find that it has taken on some of the positive attributes of its parents. Now, this was changed in a recent Minecraft update, and previously, if you bred two horses together, it was very unlikely that the stats of their offspring were going to be an improvement on what the parents had. The horse might get a little faster, but it would have a lower jump height and potentially have less health. The average of all of these stats used to trend towards the negative instead of the positive, and now they've changed that so that horses can be bred for specific characteristics. If you breed two fast horses together, you are likely to get an even faster horse, and by slowly breeding horses over time for specific characteristics, you can end up with a horse that is the fastest, most healthy, and highest jumping horse it is possible to acquire in the game. That will still require a long process of breeding up all of the horses, but it is certainly worth doing if you want some really powerful transport options this early in your Minecraft world. Now, as you're running around looking for horses, you may occasionally encounter some other horse-like animals in meadow biomes. In fact, I think the one up there is actually a horse. Yeah, it seems like some of the grey horses that we find down here are just ones that have wandered up from a plains biome, but they don't typically spawn up here on these meadow biomes. Instead, in meadow biomes, the ones with this kind of minty green grass color, you are much more likely to find donkeys spawning. Now, donkeys can spawn in a plains biome environment as well, but they are the only horse type mount that can spawn in meadow biomes. So if you're looking for a donkey specifically, it's better to go up here to the meadows. Now, we didn't have too much luck over there by my starter house, probably because any donkeys that had spawned there have wandered off, and the horses from the plains have had time to wander up to the meadow. But here, in the meadow behind the igloo, where I found my first villagers, we have a donkey, notable by its bray, which you'll probably hear in a second or two, the tall ears that it has here, and the fact that basically every donkey in-game looks the same. Unlike the horses, which have unique different markings and colorations. There we go. There's the hee-haw. The donkeys will look pretty much identical no matter where you find them. But they can be tamed just like horses in the same ways, using the same food. And if we get on top of this donkey, like the horse, it is probably going to throw us off a couple of times. There we go, and make a pretty horrendous noise when it does so, actually. But after a few attempts to tame it, we should find that this donkey becomes our friend. There we go. Now, unlike the horse, we can only put a saddle on this donkey. We cannot add any horse armor to it, so donkeys are naturally going to be unarmored. In addition, this donkey's stats are not going to vary much from other donkeys. To my knowledge, the health of a donkey can vary, but if you tamed one that has just spawned in the world, it is always going to have a very limited jump height and a very limited movement speed. But that changes when you start breeding donkeys, and just breeding 2 donkeys will start to vary their stats, but they can also be bred with horses. Donkeys can be tempted with golden carrots, and just like in real life, if you breed a horse and a donkey together, you get a strange hybrid of the two called a mule. I'm going to need a few more leads for this, but luckily the lead crafting recipe always gets you 2 leads, so we can tie up the donkey and its offspring right now. The foal has already started to grow up. You can look at the size difference between the foal here and the mule baby here. I'm not sure if mule babies have a specific name for them, but either way, we need to have this one do some catching up. It's got some growing to do, and the donkey is just kind of chilling over here. Now, the reason we want this mule to grow up nice and quickly is that mules, unlike horses and donkeys, can be equipped with chests, so we can actually use that inventory space that we see. Wow, okay, the last bit of growing up this horse did really happen quite quickly. And as with the other horses, we are going to need to sit on this horse a couple of times in order to get it used to a rider, but that's going to happen nice and quickly. And now we have a horse that kind of has an average of the stats between the diamond armored horse here and the gold armored horse. So we're going to give this one the iron armor, just to be a little clearer about who is who here. But as I was saying, the mule will be able to equip with chests, which can allow us to take inventory from place to place, expanding our player inventory. So we could stick an ender chest in there and naturally have a lot more space, but we could also carry a bunch of other resources if we wanted to go elsewhere. With that said, though, mules, much like in real life, are infertile because they're the offspring of 2 different species, technically speaking. So mules cannot breed, meaning if you want to get the fastest possible mule with the highest possible jump height and the best health, you're going to want to make sure that you have a donkey and a horse with maxed out stats in all 3 areas. And then breeding both of those to provide a mule will get you some really powerful transport options with extra storage added. I'm going to do a bit of horse breeding probably between episodes, since it is a long process and is going to require us creating a great deal of horses in order to max out some of these stats, or at least come close. And there isn't really an ideal way to measure movement speed from within the game, but we can rig up a couple of redstone contraptions that allow us to travel from one end of a course to another, and maybe measure that in terms of the amount of items that have been allowed to tick through a hopper or a hopper minecart, or something along those lines. If you're interested in learning the exact stats of your horse, the community has made a variety of mods that will show you your in-game movement speed. I believe some mods like Mini HUD or Tweakaroo have options like that. It's not something I'm too experienced with myself, but you can also maybe time it based on the amount of blocks you have traveled. Just take a look at your coordinates and see how fast you can travel a certain distance, and that should give you a more accurate idea of what kind of speed you're working with each of these horses and donkeys. Health is easy enough to measure. It's right there on the screen for you in the form of hearts, and jump height should also be easy enough to measure. You can simply put your horse through its paces by setting up a 3-block high jump or a 4-block high jump and seeing if the horse can clear it. I believe the maximum is about 5 or maybe 5.5. You can add slabs or snow layers if you want to be a bit more precise about your horse's jump height, but we'll be breeding for those stats where we can, trying to get ourselves a nice fast horse that will carry us over long distances on land with minimal fuss. But the final thing I want to do with today's episode is look at 2 more rideable entities that are an option for you as you traverse the overworld. We're not going to do rideable entities in the nether yet, of which there is 1, but instead I'm going to run the magma cube gauntlet back through my quote-unquote nether hub, and we're going to head out towards the desert so we can try and locate a camel. Okay, back over here in the desert, we've come through our desert portal by the temple, and up here on the ridge of this sand dune, you will find a desert village. And in fact, right there in front of the village is what we've been looking for. I did notice one prowling around the lower slopes here. Camels were a new mob added in Minecraft 1.20, and they spawn in desert villages. You will only ever find 1 camel per village, so that makes them increasingly rare. Unlike horses, which will spawn naturally in groups on plains, you're only ever going to find 1 camel, which requires you to find 2 desert villages in order to have breeding stock of camels. Camels are a little bit different to horses, though. You'll find that they come pre-domesticated, so if you've got a saddle, which I have of course neglected to bring with me, you'll be able to ride a camel instantly and it's not going to throw you off. Camels are, however, a little bit stubborn, and occasionally they will simply sit down and refuse to move, even if you've got a lead on you. So they are a little bit difficult to work with at times, kind of reflecting their stubborn nature in real life. I'm going to raid these nearby houses just in case one of them has a chest which might contain a saddle, but I don't think you typically get saddles as loot here in these desert villages. Let me take a look around. Well, there's a lot of bread and some cactus here, and the cactus is actually a worthwhile item to discuss because we've never picked up a cactus before. Cacti can be grown on sand and will eventually grow into a 3-tall plant, much like sugarcane, that you can simply harvest however you want to. But you'll notice the camel is a lot more interested in me while I'm holding cactus in my hand, because once again, unlike horses, camels will eat cacti. They actually take no damage from cacti when they get close to them, unlike the player, who takes a little bit of damage if you end up walking into a cacti, and cacti can also destroy items, so you need to be especially careful throwing items around near these things, because let's say we throw a stick against this cactus, it gets destroyed permanently. The player will find themselves smelting cactus down into green dye. It is the only natural way of acquiring green dye without trading with the wandering trader, but in this case this camel is going to find itself very interested in us if we are holding cactus, and it's that or a lead that can allow us to transport this camel around even if I haven't brought a saddle with me. Now unfortunately these desert villages don't really have fence posts to speak of, so once again I cannot tie up this camel anywhere, but the camel will just kind of wander around the village perimeter. It's not really going anywhere, so I'm going to sleep for the night. I'm going to have to kick this villager out of the bed to do that. We're going to head out and see if we can find another desert village, and that will allow us to find another camel that we can potentially breed with the first one. Okay, the camel is chilling in his nice shady spot behind here. I'm actually going to put a couple of torches around to light up this village, but as you can see right now, we can't really do anything to convince this camel to move. Even pushing up against it, unlike other entities, will not shift its position. Attaching a lead to it might encourage it to get up and move somewhere, but for now we're going to leave this camel alone and go out in search of another desert village. I'm quickly going to take the coordinates of this village just so I don't get too lost out here in the desert with relatively few landmarks, and I'm seeing a few of the villagers have already wandered out over this dune, so we'll take a quick peek over there to see if there's anything on this side. It would be really funny if another desert village had spawned this close, but no, it looks like there is just a badlands biome over the river on the other side. So let's venture out further into this desert, generate some new chunks, and see if we come across another desert village. Aha! There we go. Over there on the horizon, we found a second desert village. This desert is huge, by the way. This is a very, very large biome, so I'm quite happy to have that, since deserts are one of the only major sources of sand, and sand is not a renewable resource in Minecraft. There's a finite amount of it, given that the world is, technically speaking, finite, although it's massive. So finding a nice large desert biome where you can remove sand for crafting materials without feeling like you are, you know, permanently damaging the world, or at least affecting a large area of it, it's going to be a nice feeling if we are at least only making a small impact on the overall world. And this village here is thriving. It's got a lot of different houses in it. There is a camel there in the village center. You'll typically find them lounging around by the village bell, which is typically considered the center of the village. They even have some horses of their own over here, which is kind of nice. You can see a couple more examples of horses in this little paddock here with some water. At least the local cats are doing some work to take care of the rabbit population here in the desert, but despite there being a few houses with chests in, it doesn't seem like any of them have a saddle. We're just finding wheat, cactus, bread, a little bit of green dye in there if we wanted to take some of that with us. I've also found the occasional book in some of these chests, but no, sadly, we do not have a saddle around here. So we're going to have to lead these camels from one village to the other with cactus or leads in order to breed them. And this one is just kind of chilling in the water fountain right now. It seems to have found its way in there but be unable to get out. So I'm probably going to have to break some of the local village architecture in order to encourage it to leave. Nope, it is genuinely stuck in there. Okay, this is going to be fun. You know what, let's remove a couple more blocks from above this, since camels do have quite a large hitbox, and yep, there we go, it pops right out. Perfect. Let me just fix this for the villagers. Honestly, the first impression I have of these camels is that they are kind of troublemakers. So let's see if we can drag this one all the way back to our starter village. I kind of went around in an arc, so I think if I head this direction, we should encounter the first village by the desert temple. And I might just check the angle of the sun. I reckon we can make it back there in a day, but I do need to be a little bit wary of hostile mobs on the walk back. Dragging the camel on the lead is not going to be too difficult, though. Once they decide to move, they can move at a reasonable rate, and they will have no trouble getting up over blocks, since camels can actually walk over obstacles that even horses cannot. And with our camel in tow, we have made it back to the village, just in time, since the sun is setting on the horizon, and I really need to get to bed. But our other camel is waiting here in the center of the village, and something tells me these two are going to enjoy each other's company. Let's feed them both a cactus. That will put them in love mode, like so. You'll notice the little heart particles. They'll get up and get familiar with each other, and then we should, in short time, have a baby camel. There we go. Shorter than the legs of its parents, but very, very cute. Look at the little ears as they flap as they walk. That's just absolutely adorable. So like other baby animals, this baby camel will want to hang out around its parents for a little while. And once it grows up, which we can accelerate by feeding it a little more cactus, it should be just as rideable as its parents are. In fact, I'm going to head back through my nether portal and grab a saddle so we can talk about the properties of these camels. Actually, thinking about it, I wonder if we left a saddle in the burial chamber of this desert temple, seeing as how there was a fair amount of loot I think we ignored from these. There might, yes, there is, there is a saddle. And I also forgot to bring this golden apple from a while ago. We also even have some golden horse armor. So that really goes to show there's some iron horse armor in that. Never overlook desert temple loot. It might be exactly what you need. And I can't believe I've been droning on this entire time about how I needed a saddle when there was one literally like 50 blocks away. Oh well, now we get to at least show you what's going on with camels. Because saddling up a camel, it is, as before, possible to ride it around. You'll even be able to sit on the camel's back as it sits down, and you might have a harder time encouraging it to go anywhere. Camels, as you can see right now, are kind of like trucks. They are slow, but they are big, hefty, and healthy. They even have a little bit of a sprint to them, unlike horses, so you can change their movement speed a little bit, encouraging them to speed up, and instead of a vertical jump, camels actually have a kind of forward dash, which is hilarious to look at in third person because their legs kind of flail around, and this allows you to clear ravines or difficult stretches of terrain, which is a problem you find with horses a lot of the time. If you walk a horse into a river as you're riding it, the horse will start to sink, and once the horse's head reaches the waterline, the horse is going to throw you off so it can rise back up to the surface. But camels have a way of ignoring obstacles like that by simply leaping over them. There is a certain amount of skill involved in both this and getting the maximum jump height out of your horse. As you can see, as that bar fills up as I hold down the space bar, there is a red zone at the far end of it which increases the height or the distance of the jump. So in this case, if I try and fill that bar up to the maximum every time, you'll notice the camel travels a lot further of a distance than if I just tap the space bar. And in the case of the camel dash, you'll notice it does have a cooldown. The bar just kind of freezes for a couple of seconds, so you can't chain these dashes together. But even though camels might appear slow at first, it does make them a pretty effective way of getting around, especially if you spawned in a desert environment somewhere near a village. I will recommend finding a second village and breeding the camels though, just in case anything does happen to them, because as I mentioned, these camels only spawn in desert villages on world generation. There isn't really a way to respawn them yet as of Minecraft 1.20. And the reason I'm keen on breeding them is to see whether or not we can bring one back through our nether portal system back to the starting area where our house is. And since camels are relatively tall, it might be a bit of a job getting them through this nether portal in the first place, but no, there we go. The camel has gone on through. You'll notice that the lead broke at that point as well, and now the camel is just kind of sat in my nether portal. Well, if I get on top of the camel, I'm probably going to suffocate in the blocks of the ceiling here, but we can walk out, and we should be able to make our way through these tunnels. Yep, we're going to run into a couple of obstacles here, I can already tell. Including that the camel just got set on fire. So you know what? We're going to leave it in the desert. I think the desert is the perfect place for a camel. I don't know why I took one to the nether to begin with. The poor guy, the poor guy. Look at him with his 4 missing hearts of health. Let's see if we can do something about that by feeding him a little cactus. There we go. We fed the camel some cactus. That has healed 1 heart. So I should be able to hop off and feed him a little bit more cactus, and he will be nice and healed up. You should find that their health naturally slowly restores over time, but if you want to speed that up a little bit, it's best to feed them some of their favorite foods. So we have a couple of options here. We can either prepare a more ideal path through the nether, preferably one that doesn't involve fire and has at least 4 block high tunnels to accommodate the camel's height and the height of the player riding on top of them, or we can make the long trek back via the overworld and try and get this camel home by land and by sea. It is possible to drag an entity behind you whilst you're riding in a boat, but you cannot get a camel into a boat, at least not with larger camels. You might be able to do it with the baby camels, but they might also be exempt from getting into boats in the first place, because if they grow up while they're in a boat, it's going to look pretty ungainly and awkward. But either way, I'm glad we've had a little bit of time to experience camels, and we'll probably come back for this one in future. For now, though, I'm going to take the saddle from it, and we're going to talk about one more rideable mount before we wrap up today's video. Our final rideable mount is going to require me to dive into my old chests and see if I have a spare fishing rod around here, which I do, so let's grab that. Unfortunately, it looks like it has to be a brand new fishing rod. We can't craft one of these out of a damaged fishing rod, but putting this together in a crafting interface with a carrot. That is a shaped crafting recipe. I could not have called that, but there you go. Diagonally from the fishing rod, we need to place a carrot, and we can get ourselves a carrot on a stick. And now we need to go out and find a pig, because before horses were ever added to the game, and before it was even possible for the player to sprint, players could saddle a pig to ride around on it, which was only marginally faster than the player walking, but as a legacy feature, it has remained in the game. So if we saddle a pig right now, using WASD will not even give us control of this pig. Instead, we have to hold out our carrot on a stick in front of us, and honestly, I think this is probably even slower than walking. Unlike horses, pigs will not have any kind of innate speed stats. They only have 5 hearts of health. That never changes, and they are unable to jump. As you can see, there is no jump bar there, replacing my XP bar. They do have a second speed, though, and for that, we have to right-click with the carrot on a stick, at which point the pig will slowly increase its speed, and it actually gets up to a pretty decent pace, although that slows down again quite quickly. You'll also notice that has taken off a massive chunk of the carrot on a stick's durability. It takes 7 durability to boost the pig like that, or 6, I think, the second time around. It basically slowly eats a chunk of the carrot each time until finally the carrot ends up completely devoured. At which point the carrot on a stick will break and you'll no longer be able to control the pig, but it will leave you with a fully intact fishing rod. So if you brought another carrot with you, all you need to do is recraft the carrot on a stick in your crafting interface, and you should be able to lead the pig around again. But that is one of the more adorable ways of getting around in Minecraft. Unfortunately, at this point, though, the pig doesn't have an inventory GUI the way a horse or another rideable animal does. We cannot remove the saddle any way other than killing the pig. And I feel rude doing that now that I've just taken this pig on a little ride, so I think this pig is going to remain saddled, and we'll probably tie it up or paddock it with the rest of the horses so that it can be another example of a rideable mount in our world. We might even give it a name. We can give names to all of our horses and even the camels as well if we want to. We are not done talking about rideable entities in Minecraft, as there are a couple more that it might be worth getting into in future episodes, but for now, I think that's where we'll call it for this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. Folks, thank you so much for watching this episode with me. It is great, once again, to be back in the Minecraft Survival Guide world, and I hope you haven't missed me too much during my time away. The PC is performing well, and I can't wait to make more episodes for you. So that's going to be it for this one. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.